Hi everyone, just getting ready to make a pot of soup. I have all of my mise en place ready, so let's go over all of our ingredients before we get started. I have here in my bowl 1 large sweet onion, 6 large carrots, and 4 stalks of celery, and they're all diced about 1/4 to 1/2 inch dice. Along with our mirepoix, we also have 4 cloves of garlic, very finely minced, 1 pound of sweet Italian sausage or hot Italian sausage, removed from the casing, 1 small head of cabbage. We also have 1 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, and we have, you can either use small beans or cannellini beans. I have here 2 cans of white small beans and 2 cans of small red beans. To finish the soup, you will need 1 pound of ditalini pasta, which you will cook separately, and also some Parmesan Reggiano cheese. If you still have any fresh basil coming out of your garden, it would be wonderful in this soup. The last ingredient you will need is about 18 to 20 cups of chicken stock, or half chicken stock, half water. Okay, so let's get started. Hello everyone. I'm getting ready to make a nice big pot of minestrone soup. So I already went over all the ingredients with you before we get started. And the first thing we want to do is get our mirepoix sauteed. And we're actually going to sweat this for about 6 to 8 minutes. You can either use the fat from the sausage that you've already cooked, or you can use some olive oil or canola oil or grapeseed oil. So I have about 2 tablespoons of oil in my large pot, and I'm going to add my vegetables to it. And this is a good time, since we do want to sweat our vegetables, this is a good time to add a little bit of kosher salt to the vegetables. At this point, we're not looking to caramelize the vegetables. We just want to release the water, soften the vegetables, and get them where the onions are translucent and the carrots and celery are just slightly soft. Okay, so I have a little bit of kosher salt here, and I'm just going to season the vegetables with about a teaspoon of kosher salt. And I will turn up my heat so I can hear them start to sweat, and just give this a little stir. So I mentioned that you could use the fat from the sausage. So what I have here is a pound of sweet Italian sausage. I have removed the casing from it, and I crumbled it and put it in a hot saute pan that I had a little bit of olive oil in the pan. And I just cooked it until it's cooked through. I am using the fat from the sausage to sweat our vegetables. And I have it lying on a piece of paper towel just to absorb any excess fat that might be coming from the sausage. So you can have this already sauteed in a saute pan and set aside. So while those vegetables are sauteing, let's just talk about our other ingredients. In about 3 or 4 minutes, I can add my garlic. I don't like to add it right away. I first want to get the vegetables sweated, and then once they are nice and soft and ready to go, I will go ahead and add the garlic. If you are using hot Italian sausage, you wouldn't want to add any more chili flakes to your soup. But if you're using a sweet Italian sausage, you could add about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of chili flakes, and you would add it right now with your vegetables, because the chili flakes, in order to bring out that heat, needs heat. So this is a good time to add your chili flakes. And the other ingredient is our cabbage. It's really interesting how the cabbage really brings on a nice sweet flavor to the soup, and it's cabbage in the fall is so readily available, and it's growing, all the farmers are growing it right now. So it's a really good time to cook with cabbage. And this is a small head that I quartered and then sliced it, and be sure to remove the core. And you can either use a Savoy cabbage or regular green cabbage, whatever you happen to like. Savoy is very nice here, so is just a nice small sweet cabbage. And 1 can of diced tomatoes. Whatever brand you happen to like is perfectly good. This is a petite dice, and I kind of like the smaller diced tomato in the soup. It's basically the same size as the carrots and celery and onions, so I like it. It's 28 ounces, and you are going to use the juice along with the tomatoes. Because they are canned tomatoes and they are not beautiful tomatoes from your garden, you may want to add anywhere from 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar, and that's just to pull out the flavor of the tomato and enhance the sweetness of the tomato. But if you don't want to add any sugar to your soup, you certainly don't have to. But you can just add it directly to your can of tomatoes, and it'll be ready to go. I have my stock here on the stove, and it's all set and ready to go. I like to heat up the stock just because when you pour the hot stock into your soup, it comes to a boil very quickly, as opposed to having to wait a long time for it to come to a boil. With that said, you don't need to do that. If you want to add your cold stock directly to your soup and then wait for it to come to a boil before you lower it to a simmer, by all means go ahead and do that. I'm doing the dishes today. I always do the dishes. So I've just created another pot to wash, but that's okay with me. Okay, and then our beans. Traditionally, a minestrone soup is made with cannellini beans, which you can definitely use. Once again, I really like everything being somewhat along the same size, because when I dig into my bowl of soup, I like to be able to get everything on my spoon. So I use the small white and red beans, and this happens to be Goya. But of course the cannellini beans are traditional, and you can certainly use that. So these are 15 ounces, so 2 cans each. So you have plenty of beans in your soup. This is a super healthy soup and really good for this time of year. It has many vegetables in here. It has your protein. It has the beans, which is another protein. It's absolutely wonderful. And then if you happen to like a little bit of pasta, you can take your favorite pasta. I used ditalini here because it's a small pasta. I always cook my pasta separately, and then I just add a little pasta at the bottom of each bowl when I'm ready to eat. And the reason for that is that pasta will just continue and continue and continue to absorb all of your broth. So that's the reason why I never add my pasta to the soup. And if you don't want any pasta in your soup, by all means you don't need to add this at all. But I happen to like a little pasta in my minestrone. Also, you don't need the sausage. If you want to make this totally vegetarian, by all means go ahead. Add another vegetable to your soup and take out this sausage, and it will still be delicious, and replace your chicken stock with vegetable stock. So the next step that you want to do is you want to add your tomatoes. Before that though, we will put in our garlic. You want to add your tomatoes and then let that cook on medium heat for about 10 minutes. After that, we will add our cabbage and let that cook for about 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and put in our garlic. This is, once you get all of your mise en place together, which this took me about, I would say, 20 minutes to put together. Once your mise en place is in front of you, it is so easy to put this soup together, and it smells wonderful. And I will say the soup will even be that much better tomorrow and the day after, and it freezes really well. Okay, so let's get our garlic in. And now we can go ahead and add our tomatoes. And you want to bring this to a boil and then cook it on medium heat. I would say for about 10 minutes. And as a matter of fact, I will go ahead and set a 10-minute timer. So let's put in our tomatoes. I did add 1 teaspoon of sugar to that. Now, tomatoes need salt as well, and it is nice to season your soup as you go along. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of salt to my tomatoes and let that cook for 10 minutes. And I have my heat about, I'm going to put it on medium. It's just bubbling very nicely. So we'll let that go for about 10 minutes. And then you want to add your cabbage, and you want to cook it for about 5 minutes just to shrink the cabbage down, just to let it start to soften. And then you can go ahead and add your 18 cups of chicken stock. And then at that point, we will also put our sausage back in, add our stock, and we will let that cook, bring it to a boil, and then simmer it and let that cook for 45 minutes. Because I don't want my chicken stock to reduce, I don't want to lose any broth, I will partially cover it. I won't cover it all the way, but when you cover it, it helps for the stock not to reduce. If you leave it completely uncovered, your stock will continue to reduce a little bit, and I don't want to do that. So when our 10 minutes is up, I will go ahead and add this beautiful cabbage. Let that sweat for 5 minutes, and then I will throw in our fully cooked sausage, add our stock, and let that cook for 45 minutes. We add our beans at the very end, and the reason is because the beans are fully cooked. They're already cooked, so we only need to add the beans for about 10 minutes just to get them warmed through all the way. The other herb that I mentioned is basil. If you happen to have some fresh basil still out of your garden, which we do, you can chiffonade some basil directly into each bowl of soup. If you don't have any basil and you're going to use dried basil, you'd want to put your dried basil in now with your vegetables and let that start to cook. And I would say you can go anywhere from 1 to 2 teaspoons maximum of dried basil into your soup right now. You can add it to your vegetables. In the meantime, we can get some cheese grated. It is nice to wait and grate your cheese when you're ready to have your soup so it tastes so nice and fresh. And not, when you buy the cheese that's already shredded, it's drying out and it's just sitting there drying out. And there's very little moisture left in the cheese, whereas when you buy it a nice wedge like this and grate it yourself, there's a lot of nice flavor and there is more moisture in your cheese, which is really what you would like to have. Okay, so I'm just going to cut a piece of cheese and get that ready for our soup. I usually use, there's the larger grate and the smaller one. I tend to use the smaller one. Oh, I can smell it. It smells so good. Okay, so we have some nice grated cheese here, ready to go. Here we go. And there's our cheese. I will try to get close to you so that you can see them because they look so nice and you'll get an idea of what they look like. I'm going to lift some out of the pot so that you can see how nice the vegetables, they're still holding their shape beautifully. There's a good amount of liquid in the bottom of the pot from the juice from the canned tomatoes. So this looks great. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. I'm going to raise my heat once again to high, just because I'm going to add the cold cabbage here and it's going to cool things down. So that's the reason why I'm raising my heat. Then I will lower it back to medium. Before I do that, let me go ahead and put our sausage in. And I think you can see this was pretty good lean sausage. There's really no fat on the paper towel, which is great. And now let's put in our small head. And I do emphasize it is a small head of cabbage. You're not, if you can't, sometimes it's hard to actually get a small head of cabbage. If you get one that's more medium to large, just use half of it. Then you can make some coleslaw with the other half. Okay, so give this a good stir. Mix the cabbage in with your vegetables and your sausage. And once you can hear it start to sizzle again, set your timer for about 5 minutes. You're really just looking to relax the cabbage before we go ahead and add our stock. I always forget to ask everyone to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Cooking with Suzanne, Fine Regional Cuisine. So if you haven't done that, I hope that you will. And please send in your comments or any photos if you've made any of our dishes. It's always a pleasure to see what you have made. So thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoy sharing these recipes with you, and hopefully some little ideas to make things a little more enjoyable in your kitchen. We have a little bit of time right now to spend time with our family and enjoy cooking, so it is my pleasure. Okay, let's give this a stir again. Once this is ready, I'm going to just bring it up close so that you can see what the cabbage looks like. And then I will add the stock and we will let it go for 45 minutes. And then I will put my beans in for 10 additional minutes. Then our soup will be done. Okay, our timer's going off, and that was 5 minutes with our cabbage. So let me bring it over so that you can see it. The pot is getting heavier and heavier now. Okay, but I think I can do one more time. So here you go. Can you see the cabbage? It's nice and wilted. It's soft. And now our soup is ready for our stock. So let's put in our 18 cups. You can use anywhere from 18 to 20 cups. I happen to like a lot of broth in my soup, so I always put in a little bit extra. Just bring that to a boil. Okay, I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes. Once this comes to a boil, it's not quite there yet. Once it comes to a boil, I will simmer it and partially cover it, and then our soup will be done. So after our 45 minutes, I did take the red and white beans and put it in the soup, raised the heat to high, brought it back to a boil because it stopped boiling, and then lowered it. And it is now simmering for 10 minutes. In the meantime, I went to the garden and got some beautiful fresh basil. So I'm just going to chiffonade a little fresh basil to go into our soup. And all I'm doing is just piling the leaves together. Oh, it smells so good. When you break it off the stem, you really can smell how fragrant the basil is. So I just pile all the leaves, and you've probably seen this many times, but you just roll it up tightly, and then you just want to take your knife and just thinly chiffonade your basil, which is just thinly sliced. Okay, now we have some beautiful basil to put in our soup. And I did cook our ditalini pasta, which is right here. And I have it all set and ready for us. And if you do want to make your pasta ahead of time, you can make it, drain it, and then put it on a sheet pan with a little bit of olive oil and let it cool off this way. And then you can put it in a Ziploc bag and refrigerate it. And just maybe perhaps microwave just the amount of pasta that you will be using. So this is nice and hot and ready to go. And we have our cheese, and these are our beautiful biscuits that I will be demonstrating in our next video. They're buttermilk biscuits, and they're quite delicious, and it goes great with the soup. So I think our soup is ready. I think we just have a minute to go. Let's just take it off the stove. And this is a nice big pot of soup. So we have all of our ingredients here in front of us. I usually put a good spoonful of pasta in the bottom of the bowl. You can put as much or as little as you like. Then you want to add your soup. You can always start with a lot of the vegetables and beans and then go in and get the amount of broth that you would like to add to your bowl. That looks good. A little bit of broth. A little more broth. Oh, there we go. That looks lovely. Okay. And then if you would like a little cheese, and quite often I know that in Italian cuisine they like to drizzle a little extra virgin olive oil over your soup, which you can. When we used to serve this soup at the restaurant, we used to make basil oil. And if you have a lot of basil coming out of your garden, that's the time to make it. And we would enhance our soup with a little bit of basil oil. But here I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And we will top it with some cheese right in the center. And then just some nice shards of basil. And there's our timer. And I will come over and show you our lovely bowl of soup. So here is our beautiful bowl of minestrone soup. And I can even come over here now and show you our beautiful pot of minestrone soup. And as you can see, there's lots of broth, which is really nice. Especially you will need it once you add your pasta. So here you go. Thanks very much, everyone. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.